Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, your host, and this podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders make a bigger impact with insights, tips, and lessons learned from nonprofit leaders and experts. Having been an executive director, a board member, and now a consultant and coach, I truly understand the challenges you face. And that's why I'm here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, so you can make a bigger impact without the burnout. And so is our sponsor, DonorBox. DonorBox isn't just a suite of helpful fundraising tools, it's a partner that helps you raise more money and supports you in retaining your donors. I love their forward-thinking approach. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. And don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you'll get bite-sized, actionable tips just for nonprofit leaders like you, delivered weekly to your inbox. Sign up at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. My guest for this episode is Sophia Shaw, who is the co-founder of Plan Perfect, an expert-powered AI-assisted software tool helping small and mid-sized nonprofits create, review, implement, track, and report on strategic plans. With decades of experience as a successful nonprofit CEO, trustee, board president, donor, volunteer, consultant, and professor of social impact, Sophia has a deep understanding of how to maximize the power of a nonprofit. Welcome, Sophia. It's so great to have you here. Before we dive into strategic planning stuff, would you just tell us a little more about yourself personally so we can get to know you?
Sure. In addition to that lovely bio you read, on a personal note, one of the things I love to do is swim in the open water. So, I'm right this minute down in the Gulf Coast of Florida. So, I would love to swim in the Gulf and then in Lake Michigan, which is my home body of water.
Excellent. I love that. I went to college in Chicago, so I know Lake Michigan. Never swam in it, though.
Come join me. We're out there at least once a week, open water swim clinics along the lakefront.
Lovely, lovely. Well, I am overdue for a trip to Chicago for sure. Anyway, before we dive into the specifics of strategic planning, people I found have different definitions of what is strategic planning. So I'd love to hear from you. What is strategic planning? What is in a strategic plan? And maybe what is not strategic planning?
Strategic planning at the end of the day is very simple. It is simply figuring out where you want to go and how you're going to get there. So there are elements of aspiration. So what it is that you want to do to make the world a richer, more healthy place, defined for your mission of your organization. And then what are the steps that need to be taken to get there, and also to be able to pivot should something change. So a very clear strategic plan has a well articulated mission, vision, values, goals and objectives, and an executive summary so that you can share it with people. Yes, there are other components, but at the end of the day, that's really all that you need. And then you need to be able to track it and implement it and make it something that is part of your organization's everyday life. So just think about it as your own personal plan.
I love it. And I know whenever you build software, you have to really think through what things are. So I'm going to ask you a really specific question. What's the difference from your perspective, not that there's any one right answer, between a goal and an objective?
A goal is the much bigger picture, what it is that you want to achieve. And the objectives are really nestled in underneath that goal. And then beneath the objectives are tactics. Now, everybody has a different vernacular of goals, objectives, and tactics, tasks or strategic initiatives, et cetera. We've used these three terms. Some of our clients want to use their own terms. We've just stuck with these as they feel all encompassing.
Yeah. So let's now pull back for a moment. Why should organizations have strategic plans? Or maybe are there cases when organizations don't need a strategic plan?
Every organization needs a plan at all times. And whether that is a business, whether that is a nonprofit, whether that is a plan for going to the supermarket, running a race, whether that is going to college, anything in life, you need to have a plan. That does not mean you can't shift that plan. So think of the plan, and I love this analogy, less like a roadmap and more like a compass. So you need to have an understanding of where you're going, how to get there, but moreover, where to shift if you need to. Just think of the example of COVID. Everybody had to shift a bit, or with the changes in funding, people need to shift. But without a plan, you don't know how to do that. You don't know how to be aligned. I really liked what we were talking about, just before we hopped on, about abundance and about, I really, really deeply believe that a plan not only helps you to get you to where you want to go, but it also makes that journey more joyful.
Yeah.
Because if you and I are going to the same place with this podcast and having something that people want to listen to that's enriching their lives, then we're going to be able to do it not only more successfully, but with more positive energy when we leave it. And that's the same thing with the strategic plan. The board chair, staff, the board all can work together to help people better.
Yeah, I love that. I think, one of the things I've experienced, you said the word alignment, and I just want to dig into that because I think in many ways a strategic plan is an alignment tool. It's about having everybody row in the same direction and knowing where that they're all and everybody being in agreement that they're going to the same place. But your destination can change. That doesn't mean you shouldn't know your destination at any given moment. I used to give a workshop on strategic planning, and I used to say, because I was frustrated with kind of what is less common, but what I consider an outdated strategic planning model, where it's like, the 5-year tens and the 5-year plans and the 10-year plans, which we don't see as much as we used to. But I was saying, like, I don't want my plan to just be the destination. I want it like the modern GPS on my phone. I want like turn by turn directions. I want it to know if there's traffic up ahead and reroute me, tell me there's a faster route. And if I want to go someplace new, I don't want to have to like pull out a whole map. I want to be able to like put it into my little GPS and have it, bloop, 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 some, new thing. And now I want to ask you about, like, you've built AI into your tool. Tell me that thought process that you've gone through and where to put AI, how to make it work, because we are getting into a space where we can iterate our planning even more thoroughly and more rapidly using AI. And I think we're just scratching at the surface. So talk me through AI in Plan Perfect.
I will. I'm going to start back a little bit more and maybe tell you a little bit about my background, and that I've been in the nonprofit sector my whole life, and mostly in cultural organizations. I became president and CEO of the Chicago Botanic Garden, which is one of the biggest, greatest botanic gardens in the world. It's about 400 acres outside of Chicago. And there we made a short-term plan, operating plan, a 10-year plan, and then we had a 50, 100-year plan because we were planting trees. So like you can have the longest vision possible, but also this short and more snappy one that can be like your GPS of where you want to go. The other part of my background and leading into the answer to your question is that I led the Kellogg Board Fellows program at Northwestern's Business School. And for 5 years, I helped the MBA students learn how to be good board members. These were MBA students who wanted to be for-profit leaders, for-profit, successful business leaders, but they also knew that part of that service to their companies and to their community was to serve on a nonprofit board. So I taught them during this time period how to serve on nonprofit boards. So, and that said, I was also been a board chair, as you said in the intro, volunteer. There's really, probably like you, there's really not much I don't know about the nonprofit sector from every corner. So I thought, here I am. I'm a mature individual, and I thought, why don't we put, with my co-founder Adam Wolford, all of this information that's in my head into software that can help the very most number of nonprofit leaders and let them focus on what they're good at. They're good at delivering the services, they're good at working with people. They don't need to know everything in here. So, how do you get this into a product that they can use? Well, there's this magical thing, AI, which is not so magical. I mean, it's a technology tool, and it's allowed us to train we're calling our small language model to be very specific to the nonprofit sector in a closed environment with people who the client can trust. So we're using it to be like that little bit of let's say when you're cooking, maybe you have your blender or your power tool, if you're doing some construction, that little bit of help on each step along the way. So it's a real partnership between a person and this AI tool, which is driven by what I know and the best practices in the industry.
I love it. I love it. You said a few little things in there I want to highlight for folks. I love the example of, the goal for the 100-year goal for the trees. One of the things that, in my kind of study of planning is that it's not really about the length of the plan. It's about the natural length of the goal. And some goals, like growing trees, I love that. I never thought of that one. I usually use for a long-term goal, like if you replace your roof with a 50-year roof, you can go ahead and set a 50-year goal to replace the roof, right? So each goal I've always found has its own natural timeline. And we don't have to say, oh, well, we're only going to look 1 year or only 5 years. You set the goals that you set, and they naturally have the appropriate timeline baked
Mhm.
into how they are. And I think that, that can be a misstep that I've seen some folks make in both directions, either looking too far forward. So, like, I'm thinking of the organizations who are really struggling with capacity issues, not having enough funding, and they're setting these huge future goals, and they haven't set any like short term, like, how do we figure out fundraising goals? And then other organizations who aren't looking far enough forward because they
Mhm.
need to have that vision, their future can be looked at really far and ahead, or they need a really strong pull from a big vision that doesn't feel like possible tomorrow, but they want to align people to. And here, one of the famous examples that come to mind is, when Kennedy set the goal for landing on the moon, right? It was a really big goal that it felt impossible, but insisting that, hey, we're really going to do this and we're going to bring the people together. So, like, finding that balance that doesn't constrict you too far forward, or or not close enough, or not far enough forward, or too close.
Yes, makes sense. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think that that's really key. And AI, right? It's a tool, and right, and using it, I personally am not scared of AI. And I hear these words thrown around, but I'm not. And it just kind of goes back to that abundance mindset. Like, AI is here. Being afraid of it doesn't really serve me. Learning how it works and how to use it and how it works, when it works well and serves me well, and when it doesn't, because it
Right.
can lead you down a rabbit hole that sounded great at first. So I love to hear you just talking about it as like, it's a tool, we're going to use it, especially as someone who's been in the space a long time. And I see, like, it sounds like you've seen the ebbs and flows and adapting. I have a question for you. In creating a tool for strategic planning, what new things did you learn about strategic planning and structuring it?
Well, one of the things I learned is that a very short term plan can actually be very healing and more joyful for a board and its staff. And I was surprised by that, because coming from the 100-year tree plan and then really spending a lot of time now recommending that people, especially boards and staff that are rocky or haven't come together recently in a good way, or with a new CEO, that they make a 6-month or a year plan and then agree that in 6 months or a year they're going to they're going to try to extend it, see what worked, see what didn't. I was surprised how successful that's been. Another thing that I didn't probably do enough when in my previous jobs making plans is really invest a lot of time in the discovery component. So spending enough time doing surveys and focus groups of the people we serve. And so the more time people ask the questions of the students, patients, participants, et cetera, they serve, the more they're going to find out. So in Plan Perfect, we have a incredibly robust discovery process that can happen before a plan is made and inform the plan. It can happen after the plan is made and then inform the plan, because we see plans as ever generating, ever new, ever growing. So you can do the discovery at any point. And that's also been really helpful to align boards and the program participants, because oftentimes boards are so far removed from the people they serve. So if a board thinks, oh, this program is the best, but those people in that program actually don't think it's the best, I think you're going to get a much better plan. The other thing that surprised me is just how busy people are and how hard it is, how scary planning is for a busy person. I'm a different personality. When I get stressed, I make a plan. And when other people get stressed, they freeze.
They throw the
Exactly. And that's been a real surprise. And it's something that I've really had to learn about myself and be maybe more generous to say, wow, okay, this, Sophie, is your strength. It's not everybody's strength. So how in that sort of abundance mindset can we ensure that our software meets people at their learning style, at their comfort, at their personal history? And that's what we're doing right now. Our software works fantastic. We've had a lot of client success, but now we're spending a few months really working on how to make it as absolutely friendly and intuitive as possible. And that's again where AI, or maybe not even call it AI. I think maybe we should just abandon the words AI and just say technology. When we were all in horse and carriage and somebody, invented the car, that was terrifying. We just call it transportation now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we just say technology, or, running water instead of going out to an outhouse or something. Like, it just is a tool that we have at our disposal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true again about AI. In fact, a lot of what I see people calling AI is the same thing that we've been calling automation for like several decades now, right? It's just been like relabeled AI because AI sounds cooler. But probably more importantly, I think those insights, I have experienced a lot of those things in my own, working with people, in that, the work of an expert isn't really or an expert consultant or coach, I think, isn't really to know so much. I mean, we do know so much, and it allows us to see things that other people don't when they're inside the organization or don't have that experience. But it's about bringing the people along to where they need to be, which is not really a process of us telling them where they need to go. It's, truly, how do we help them take a journey? And I found that, I remember one of the things in studying strategic planning that frustrated me was seeing strategic planning proposals when I was on a board myself. I've been on several boards, and almost every proposal began with a phase of like planning to plan. And it made sense why it had to be done, but this was a product of planning is happening so infrequently. It's scary, it's uncomfortable. It feels like it's this thing that if you do it wrong, you're going to be stuck with something awful, or you'll just shove it in a drawer and not, try to forget that you wasted a lot of money because that you spent it on something, and then you're like, that's not right. Like, let me get rid of it. But I was like, this feels like a waste, planning to plan. My own solution has been, I created a planning system where the staff leads planning, and they do strategic planning every 2 months. So after they've done it like 2 or 3 times, like, planning to plan is not a thing, and no one's like worried about strategic planning, and anything that they do can just be redone in 2 months, right? So the stakes are lower. And I think that, I was thinking about that as you were talking about shorter term planning helping people. And I think especially if for those people who've had bad experiences with strategic planning, that short term plan, or as you said, like boards that are in turmoil or teams that are in turmoil, I often think about like, I have this metaphor I like to use. Like, if you're on a tiki raft in an ocean, you like to swim in the ocean, like, you don't really need to worry about where you're going. You really need to worry about getting on a bigger boat. And everything about getting someplace significant is going to feel a lot better once you're on the bigger boat. And I was thinking about that as you're talking about, like, especially, I think of it often as organizations who are under capacity, but I think it really applies to those teams or boards who are in some sort of crisis, right? They need a stabilization, and a short-term plan is often much more stabilizing. Like, how am I going to feel okay in the next 6 months is much more reassuring than trying to figure, like, I don't feel okay now. How am I supposed to figure out the next year or two?
Yeah, right. Ideally,
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
We actually have a planning to plan module in our software. And I wholeheartedly agree with you that once you've planned to plan and then you've made a plan, then it's about renewal and use, which is why we have a dashboard function. So even if you already have a plan, you can put the plan in, and then you can track the plan and just continually evolve it. You can still keep historically that first document, but you can, so for people who aren't yet to where we are in understanding planning, rest assured there is also the opportunity to plan and have those discussions and try to lay it out. And what we've done is we have the 6 phases of strategic planning, and then you can check which to-do tasks are essential for you, and then you can choose them, put them in there, and then lay it out, and then hopefully no longer revisit planning to plan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at some point you have to start, right? So you have to plan to get started, but life is so much easier if you just do that once and then just keep your rhythm ongoing. Because
maybe it's like the couch to 5K.
That's right. That's right.
Once you've done the couch to 5K, hopefully you're never doing the couch to 5K again.
Yeah. Keep your fitness. I've actually just gotten on a treadmill, which I usually can't stand recently, but I'm a sailboat racer and it's the off season for me. And what I love about sailing is it keeps me fit. I don't have to, work out in other ways if I go sailing 3 times a week. Exactly. It's like the whole package. If I'm racing, I like to race. So, if I'm just cruising, then there's a lot more sitting and eating. But it's about having that routine. And I've been looking at kind of expanding my sailing season this year. This hasn't been in the cards as much winter sailing. But we create patterns that are healthy for us. Mm-hmm. And I want to go back to a challenge because, like you, I don't know if I'm a natural planner or I have just learned the value of leaning in to planning when chaos happens or crisis happens. I think naturally I am just calm in a crisis. Like, my reaction is, let's just slow down time and do things right. That's probably the thing that comes naturally to me. And then when you have that natural reaction, like, that leads you to planning. But like you, I have seen so many people kind of they literally are like, it's busy, I'm just going to stop using any kind of organizational stuff. And I have had, I'd like to think, a fair amount of success working with folks to kind of reprogram themselves. But I'm wondering what you have found, like, that helps people lean into planning when there's a crisis. Because I truly believe that unless it's just you, right? But if there's a team, and if you're in a nonprofit, there's a team because you have a board, you need plans to keep people gelled. Or when crisis happens, it turns into chaos and people go flying all over the place.
Yeah, maybe you and I could get into this really funny conversation about all these different analogies. Because when you were talking about that, I was thinking about like party planning. So if you have a party plan and like, okay, A through D brings the main course and E through whatever brings salad and somebody else brings dessert, then you're going to have a nice potluck. If I oftentimes go to potlucks where people like, everyone brings something. And then you have, 10 different bowls of chips and salsa or like shrimp plates or something like that. So I think, we plan in all different parts of our lives. And let's just go back to the party is that then you end up with a table that has things people want to eat on it. The party's happier and not everybody has to go out and find some other food afterwards because they've just had, you know, tortilla chips. So, and I know like people listening is like, what is she even talking about with party planning and potlucks, whatever. But I think it's just understanding that we have the ability to make plans in every other part of our lives. We can plan trips, we can plan parties, we can plan whatever it is, the courses that we're going to take when we were in college or in high school or whatever. And strategic planning should feel like that, like a unifying, happy opportunity for success and not something that is going to, break out, have to break out little sticky notes everywhere and somebody take notes and do SWOT analysis. And that our system does a lot of that for people, which I think people find satisfying, is that it generates a SWOT analysis by pushing a button after you do enough insight generation. Yeah. So I guess that's how I'd answer it.
Yeah, I love that. And, as you said that, I think unraveling a piece of this is I think a lot of people have been exposed to planning and plans potentially that are so rigid. They feel like planning and spontaneity are like two opposite things. But I think great plans and great planning processes allow for spontaneity. You said this right in the beginning. A great strategic planning can be changed, right?
Yeah.
If it was
Right.
a rigid plan that couldn't be changed, it's not a good plan. It's not a good planning system. It might have been a good plan at one point, but you don't have a good planning system if it doesn't include the ability to change. And if you're, depending on the nature of the world you live in, maybe that's a slow change, maybe that's a change on a dime when it's called for. But I think, and I was thinking the potluck example, like I love, right? When I was visioning, right? You could have it's a potluck, just bring anything. And that's the end of the story. And people don't really love that because then they stress over what am I going to bring? What if it's this? And what if nobody likes that? And what if there's a nut allergy, right? And what if I'm gluten free, right? If there's a gluten allergy, like I better bring, but it doesn't have to be like, here's the spreadsheet. Everybody has to fill in exactly. It can be like, I'm bringing these core things, or like, hey, why don't you do something in the appetizer department, right? It can be a looser, just a little enough structure to give
Enough structure.
people alignment and clarity without so much structure that it feels like control.
Exactly. And looking at a team where if you don't have that, like if one person is lacking a plan, okay, then the person can figure things out and be spontaneous on their own. But if you're a group, and some small nonprofits might be a small group, they get bigger and bigger. And as they get bigger, that's when they oftentimes break, because if you have like 15 or 16 people trying to be spontaneous when they don't have a strategic plan, then you really get all, to use, probably very not non-official term, mucked up. Like you get stuck because you become like you're in a labyrinth and no one knows where to go. I mean, there's that old analogy, especially once you get into fundraising, is that which most nonprofits need to do, is that if there's this story about the potential donor comes in the room and says, I'll give you $10 million if on the one condition that the board chair on the one end of the table and the CEO on the other end of the table whisper in my ear with the same one strategic goal that they have for my $10 million. And that's only a funny or, a parable of sorts, because so often the two can't say the same thing. So
Yeah.
even if it's a plan that you all got to know what everybody is intending to do with a donation makes fundraising easier.
Yeah,
Let's take
absolutely.
the barriers out of our
I
own
know
way.
we're coming up on time, but I want to dig into that topic just a little because it is so true that at least having a direction part of your plan, like maybe making it all operational isn't needed, I've found, but like if you don't look like you have a clear plan, you don't look good to fundraisers, and it's really hard to donors, and it's
Mhm.
really hard to tell the donors, and I want to say good story, but really a clear story, right? That of where you're going, right? They need to be able to envision it like you envision it, that you're all, and then they need to believe that there are people in alignment, right? That it's not just kind of like a rogue thing. My own kind of first experience with major donor giving, I was a deputy director and I was working at a nonprofit, and there was a significant major donor. I wasn't really involved in that piece very much, but I was good at formulating plans, and they'd just been getting small amounts and small amounts and small amounts before I'd gotten there. And the donor wanted to talk to me. And so I got on the phone with them, and they're like, well, what do where is this organization going? What's the plan? And I just shared, because my first thing when I came to the organization was like, where are we go? Where am I trying to make this thing go? Right. And I just shared that vision. And about a week later, we got a letter that we'd be getting 100,000 a year unrestricted times
Wow,
3 years. Right. Like
great.
that. And to me, like that is the power. And it wasn't like a ton of stewardship. Like, yes,
Mhm.
that donor had been watching the organization and they cared about its cause and its mission, but they had been like hanging on, hanging out for years, waiting for somebody to give them something that they could really give to, something that was worth $300,000. And that was a huge investment. It almost doubled that teeny nonprofit's
Oh, that's great.
operating budget. So I was like, oh, well, that was easy, right? And to this day, though, I really feel like that's how easy fundraising can be. It can be
Mhm.
easy. And I actually just wrote an article about how, like, talking to donors, which so many people are like, I don't want to do it. It's like when you do it well, it's fun because you're
It's
talking.
fun.
Yeah. You're talking to people who love you and want to help you, right? And that
Yeah,
feels
and they
great.
need to give away their money, and they want to give away their money,
That's right.
and you got to realize that by giving your nonprofit their money, you're bringing them joy.
That's right.
It is a mutually beneficial relationship. And so if it's not going anywhere, there are other people for whom it will be joyful.
That's
And
right.
sometimes I think as fundraisers, we push and push and push against wanting somebody to give us that acknowledgement and recognition that we personally want, but maybe they just don't want to give to our organization. But there are other people who do, for
Yeah,
sure.
there are. And, just at that strategic planning level, I think every organization should be able to fund most of their operations on the campaign of their strategic plan. I'm just kind of making that term up, but I think we're so programmed to be like, we need a specific campaign for this or that. But your strategy and your vision and your destination can can take you like most of the way. You don't need to
Mhm.
overcomplicate it. You can add campaigns after, right? Specific
Yeah.
things to level up your game, but you don't need all of that. First master, like just sharing that vision and the overall whole direction for the whole thing. I really
Yeah.
have you seen that like you can get far with that.
Far. For no, we had a client this summer who just was able to show their board that they had a plan. They had a dashboard that tracked their plan, which I really think is even more important than having the best plan in the world, is tracking a plan that you can demonstrate.
Yeah.
And then she's gone out of the gate on the capital campaign and it's really going well. And I just one last note is that it also helps save somebody's job as an executive director. That we see a lot of turnover in the executive director role when there is misalignment between the board chair or the board and the executive director. And so if you, as an executive director listening, it's incumbent upon you to make sure there is a plan so that you can, continue in the role.
Yeah. And to have that data to be like, hey, we're the plan is progressing, it's happening, or hey, that part of the plan didn't work, not because we didn't try it, but because what we thought would work just didn't work, right? And we took a turn.
Right. And it also keeps the board at a high level, because if you can be showing them at every single board meeting, this is where we are in the plan, then they're going to focus on the big picture. They're not going to get into, whether you use blue or black ink on your stationery or something.
I love it.
Like, they're going to stay at the macro level, strategic level, not the micro level, if that's where you help direct them.
Yeah. Well, I could hang out and talk about strategic planning all day with you, but I know our listeners are busy and they have other things to do. So before we sign off, who are the folks who should be reaching out, and what's the best way for them to do that?
We would hope anybody who is involved in a nonprofit could reach out. So that is, if you're a staff member, a board member, or a donor to nonprofits. We work with a lot of donors as well. And my email is sophia@planperfect.co, and our website is planperfect.co.
Excellent. We'll have those in the show notes as well. Sophia, thank you so much for being here and your generosity of your lifetime to the field and putting it into a software to share what you have learned with our community even farther. I really appreciate that effort.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And thank you out there for listening and everything you do. If this episode was helpful, share it with a friend or colleague. Also, rating and reviewing wherever you listen to this podcast boosts it in the algorithm so it can be shared and help other folks learn how to run their nonprofits in a way that is smarter, not harder, and with abundance mindset. And until next time, I wish you all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.